Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 275 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 3 of A Dance with Dragons, that's Jon 1.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we are going to spoil things for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I see you've come in character today.
So Mackelly's laughing at me because I'm wearing, you know the word for it?
Snuggie.
A snuggie.
Yes.
It's perishing cold here today, and I am really, and partly because I'm dieting, I'm always cold. I'm like constantly cold. So I'm wearing this. I don't care that I look like Samwell Tarly.
Well, it's black, right? It looks black.
It is actually a dark blue, but in this light, it certainly looks black. Yeah.
Okay.
I could pass.
Well, Yes, you definitely could pass for a Brother of the Night's Watch. Well, I'm doing all right. So this week, my penny, and I say my penny because for those listeners who aren't longtime listeners, Simon and I both have a dog named Penny.
I think you should be more clear than that, actually, because it makes it sound like we share a dog.
That's true. We have two separate dogs, both happen to have the name Penny. Well, she'll be 12 this year. You know, she's not a spring chicken, and she's doing fine.
She's a little dog. She's going to go on forever. She's middle aged for a dog her size.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so. She still goes on 2-mile walks with us, and plays chase with the ball down the hallway and all the fetch and all that stuff. But when she sleeps. She basically is Stacy's chaperone in bed. She sleeps between the two of us and ensures that we don't get up to any funny business. Mm-hmm. And but these days, when she goes to jump on or off the bed, she kind of has to gird herself a bit. She kind of gives a little yelp of like you can do this, and leaps up or back down. Leaps off, and So we thought, she's getting old. That can't be good on her little joints to be jumping so high, especially down. So we bought her dog steps, and it came this past weekend. And we put them at the end of our bed, and we've been putting treats on the steps to try and get her to go up the steps and down the steps. And that dog refuses to use those steps every time. Usually the way it works in the morning is Stacy gets out of bed first, then the dog, and then me. And every morning after Stacy gets out of bed, it's just the dog and me. And sure enough, she just leaps. She does her little, you can do this. And it leaps off. And I'm like, there's stairs right next to this morning, she jumped parallel to the stairs within 4 inches from the stairs. And I guess she's not willing to admit that she needs the assistance yet.
Yes, it's like she's refusing the walker. Yes, I get it.
Right. I can do this. I'm not old and infirmed.
That's a sweet story. I mean, maybe that's what she needs. It's going to be the impetus, isn't it? Like, these people think I'm decrepit. I'll show them.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess maybe we'll put them away for another day.
Yeah. I think, given the size of your dog, you could manipulate her up the stairs. I mean, she is basically a toy.
Yes, we've tried that. We tried boop, 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 boop,
yeah.
boop, 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 up and down. But it doesn't work when she's on her own. When she's left to her own devices.
Oh, she's such a sweet dog. I mean, apart from the horribleness, but she is a sweet dog.
Yeah, the growling and snarling.
My own Penny has that same thing. She's a sweet, sweet dog, but she's got a side to her. I just try to imagine trying to get my Penny up and downstairs. I mean, she's a little too big for that kind of thing.
Right.
And she would let you know if you tried. She'd be like, see these teeth? You want to be introduced at great speed?
Right. So anyway, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I have a slightly funny story from work, actually. As you know, me and my colleagues put out a weekly newsletter at work.
Yes, you do.
And I'm a frequent contributor there too. But
I can usually tell when it's a bit written by you. I feel like I can tell the Simon bits.
Well, thank you. That's I think. But I think you know who the main person is who does the work for that. Anyway,
yeah.
After Mondays went out, our boss sent an email to me and my cohorts who write this and said, I thought that work today was really excellent. It was really clear, very well written. I thought it was great. And I felt a little bit of pride about this. I was like, well, not so bad. But it made me go and look at it again. And I realized that my contribution to the bit that he was referencing was the first draft, and the end product was unrecognizable from the first draft. Nothing had survived. So it rather deflated me, but I thought it was kind of funny. So I pinged the person who deserved the credit to say,
yes,
to explain that. I felt pride. Then I looked at it, realized that you'd done all the work, and I felt, sort of like bad. And I wanted to tell you deserve a lot of credit. And she said, Simon, I think you're misremembering what you did. You didn't even supply the first draft of that part. You supplied the first draft of a different part that he didn't comment on. So even now,
getting worse.
Even now, you're trying to steal some credit for something you had no involvement in at all.
Oh, that's funny.
I had lunch with my boss today, and I told him, and he was cracking up. He was like, "Yeah, that sounds like you, Simon." I mean, I was genuinely trying to be nice, but I ended up just looking like I was trying to grab credit that I had no business.
Just keep making it worse. That reminds. So Molly, she sent me 2 pictures of this paper that she's doing for one of her classes, and she said, how does the grammar look in this paper? Well, it's 2 pages. I wasn't going to read the whole thing from photos taken on a phone. So
I thought you meant that was just too many words.
No, it was. She took pictures of it and sent it to me. I was like, I'm not going to read this whole thing on a little. We'll have to zoom in and out, So I looked at the comment at the top, and it said, "The grammar is excellent, almost too good. ... But grammar was misspelled, and 2 was only TO." And I was like, who are you getting grammar advice from? Because this person really should not be giving advice as such.
That's fantastic. Man, if you're gonna critique someone, bring your A game.
I thought that was pretty funny. I was like, don't go to this person for any kind of grammar advice anymore.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How do we leave Jon Snow? And actually, you really might need to help me here, because I kept getting confused as we read this chapter, just so you know. Okay, so bail me out.
Together we'll get through it.
Right, okay. So last time we saw Jon was in the first Sam chapter of A Feast for Crows, where he was evacuating Sam and anyone with royal blood from the wall as quick as possible. The last Jon POV we had, he was reunited with Ghost, had decided to refuse Stannis' offer of Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, and had been elected Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
Mackelly, it's understandable that you were confused, because that chapter was all the way back in A Storm of Swords. So it's been a long while.
Exactly, yeah. Why don't we give the summary of this one? And let's mention before we start, because this is the bit that really threw me, this is literally back in time. Because you will see some characters that are A, dead, and B, not at the wall, showing up in this chapter. So
all right. So
let's step back in time. Away you go.
Yes. Good note there before we start to help straighten some people out who might be confused. So Jon is awoken from a wargy dream by Mormont's raven. In the dream, Ghost feels his connection to his siblings. Jon's using Donal Noye's quarters. Stannis has the King's Tower, and the Lord Commander's Tower is a burned-out shell. Jon notices that Ghost's connection to his siblings seems stronger, and wonders, under the impression that Bran and Rickon are dead, whether Jon's brothers still survive within their wolves. Jon is sure that he saw Summer with his own eyes when escaping the wildlings at Queen's Crown.
There are more than 1,000 wildlings held captive north of the wall. Jon has put guards on the guards to stop the soldiers warming their beds with the women. Jon recalls that he heard a Queen's soldier muttering, "Two kings to wake the dragon, the father first and then the son, so both die kings." He sees the parchment that Stannis gave to him, still unsigned. Jon worries about it. Stannis is proving a prickly guest, and this is unlikely to be a friendly meeting. He heads down and watches the recruits going through their paces. Jon proffers some advice.
One night, Sir Godry challenges Jon to spar and mocks him when the Lord Commander demurs. He surveys his command. Castle Black is a mess, and the rebuild of the stairs is incomplete. On the stairs of the King's Tower, he bumps into Sam. How about that? Mm-hmm. Exhibit A. Coming from the king after delivering a letter received by none other than Maester Aemon. Exhibit B. Apparently, it was not good news. Mm-hmm. Jon can guess it was another Northern Lord refusing to bend the knee. He arrives in the warm solar where Stannis and Melisandre sit. The king wants to know who Lyanna Mormont is. Jon supplies the details, the 10-year-old daughter of Mage Mormont. It turns out that the child's response was, well, shall we say, Stark?
Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north whose name is Stark. Jon's a bit confused. Lyanna has several older sisters. Did they all go with Robb? Jon cannot help but think that the response might have been different if the request had come from Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Only the Karstarks have bent the knee, and Jon knows that this is because they're sundered from the Starks and the Lannisters. Jon points out that honourable men should be excused from failing to comply when so many kings stalk the land. Plus, they're afraid of Tywin and the Boltons. Stannis needs money to pay Salladhor Saan, but the Night's Watch have none. They barter for their needs.
Stannis needs White Harbour. The Manderleys are the richest family in the north. Stannis and Melisandre consider marrying Val to Lord Manderley, but Jon says that he's 30 stone and Val wouldn't have him. Stannis would love just one answer that pleases him from Jon, but Jon hopes that the truth will do. The wildlings can't be coerced, only Mance can lead them. But Stannis can't forgive the oathbreaker, but he can burn him and his son. But Jon points out that there is no birthright claim north of the wall.
To business. Has Jon signed the grant? No. Stannis wants the wall castles. Jon has already ceded the Night Fort, but Stannis wants the rest. Jon is happy for them to be garrisoned, but word is that Stannis plans to grant them to his knights and lords, even to Rattleshirt and the Magnar of Then. Where had Jon heard this? Well, from Gilly, actually. Stannis is angry again, but Jon assures him that she'll be gone on the next ship.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Jon argues that he's aided Stannis already, depleting the Night's Watch stores, providing warm clothing, etc. But Stannis points out that, but for him, the Night's Watch would all be dead. But Jon won't budge. The Night's Watch castles are not Stannis' to grant. Stannis asks who Jon thinks he is, and Jon replies with the Night's Watch vows. Stannis draws his sword to show Jon what a sword in the darkness really is. Jon again resists. The Night's Watch will appoint leaders at each castle. Stannis should provide men for them to lead. They don't need to take the black, but they must obey.
Stannis is incredulous. His men cannot be ordered by peasants and poachers, but Jon cites Davos's prior occupation. Stannis wonders if the 999th Lord Commander would be a bit more compliant if Jon's head topped the wall. Jon is number 998. Jon tells that Ned always said that Stannis was just. Stannis does not recall Ned as a friend, but he's sure that Ned would have yielded the castles. Jon is sure otherwise, but it doesn't matter. He's the Lord Commander. The wall is his. Stannis relents. Jon can keep the castles, but if any lies empty a year from now, he'll take them, and if any fall, Jon's head follows.
Melisandre walks Jon back. She says that Stannis is growing fond of Jon, who doesn't quite see it that way. She links arms with Jon. She suspects that Jon is right about Mance. She will need to consult the flames. Are they ever wrong, Jon wants to know? Never. But mortal priests can misinterpret. She's seen Jon in the flames, and he thinks that might be a threat, but she assures him she wants his friendship. She offers to name those who plot against him, but he knows their names. She cautions that it's the quiet ones he should fear. She sees ice, blood, daggers, and cold. He should keep Ghost close. He knows it's cold at the wall. She tells him that he knows nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds familiar.
Yes. Maybe it's true. Maybe just every woman who meets him gets the same idea. It's funny. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
He just keeps thinking that it's a term of endearment.
Yeah.
No, really, you know nothing.
I've never heard that said to anyone else. I've never heard that sentence not end in Jon Snow.
Right.
But every woman seems to know it.
You might want to spend some time thinking about this. So, like you mentioned before we started the summary, we have gone back in time. We're roughly back to the time period of the beginning of A Feast for Crows. So, rather than advance the story, A Dance with Dragons, for the most part, is going to run concurrently with The Feast for Crows. I think we mentioned that at the end.
We did.
Conclusion of Sam's chapter at the end of A Feast for Crows.
But what's kind of tricky as a sort of mental exercise to do is keep track of, for example, they're still worried about Tywin Lannister, who for us died a bazillion years ago, you know.
Yes. So I went back and looked at just some of the early A Feast for Crows chapters to see what was going on. And so, yeah, the very first Cersei chapter, which was one of the very earliest, she and Jaime discover Tywin's death and Tyrion's disappearance, which of course Jaime knew was happening because he concocted the plan to spring Tyrion. But then another early A Feast for Crows chapter is Arya landing in Essos. She lands in Braavos, not Pentos, which is where Tyrion is early in this chapter. So, yes, but they're there roughly the same time, I guess.
Yes, that's strange. I hadn't thought of that. And Sam won't be too far behind.
Yes, right. Because he does meet Arya there.
He does meet Arya there, yeah. But
yes.
So quite a few of the characters were on Essos simultaneously.
Yes.
Partially unwittingly. But
and then the very early, I think it might be the first A Feast for Crows chapter, is when Aeron Greyjoy learns that Balon is dead and Euron sits the sea stone chair and Aeron declares the king's moot. So and then chapter 5 is when Sam is told he's leaving with Gilly and the baby and Aemon, and they leave for the trip to Old Town. So
that presumably that will probably correspond to Jon 2, or perhaps Jon 2 will start with just the aftermath of that. They wake up and Sam and Gilly and Aemon have disappeared. Yeah.
Yes, could be. But yeah, to your point, the news of Tywin's death has likely not reached Stannis and the Night's Watch yet.
Well, I mean, if we're doing it if we're imagining these books in the boiled leather way, sort of side by side, then his body is just being found at this moment. So yes, word hasn't reached here. Yeah.
Yes, because Jon makes the comment, the Northerners fear the wrath of Tywin Lannister. So
So starting with the war dream at the beginning, Ghost can sense his siblings, which is interesting, of course, because two of his siblings are now dead, right? Ghost siblings, both.
Yeah, Grey Wind and Lady.
Lady, yes. But actually, we skipped over it in the summary, but he actually is well aware of what Nymeria is up to, that Nymeria has a whole pack of wolves following her and making all kinds of mischief in the Riverlands, it seems. So distance doesn't seem to be that much of an object to him.
No. Yeah, you're right. He senses all the... First of all, Jon realizes that Ghost knows that Grey Wind is dead, because he said there was 6, then there were 4 others, and 1 he can no longer sense. So he knows that Grey Wind is no longer with them. But then he thinks about Shaggy Dog fighting this enormous goat who raked him with a horn, and he thinks of Nymeria in the Riverlands, where it's warmer and there's more food, and she's surrounded by their smaller cousins.
Right.
And then he thinks of Summer on the other. He senses that Summer's north of the Wall, where it's even colder than it is where Ghost is, and so yeah, he kind of senses where they are geographically, not just that they're, there.
Am I being dim for forgetting Shaggy? Why did Shaggy Dog fight a goat? Do we know this?
We don't. When Bran and Rickon went their separate ways at Winterfell,
Shaggy had not been
following.
Right.
Well, Shaggy went with Rickon and
right. Yeah.
Osha, and we have not followed them. We followed Bran to this point. But then Jon thinks about the fact that Bran and Rickon are dead, and possibly some of their spirit has survived in their wolves. And we know, because we read the prologue of this book with Varamir Sixskins, that there is this second life thing for wargs. But Jon, I don't think, knows that. So he's kind of just pondering the idea.
I guess maybe it's sort of a natural sort of like thought that if you can partially inhabit, in Jon's case, Ghost, while you live, that at your death, maybe it's just a coincidence. If you happen to be doing that when your body dies, your spirit could stay within Ghost. I mean, maybe it's just a natural thought process for people who can warg to come up with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is coincidental that we know that this is possible, and Jon is speculating on the very idea of it at the same time.
Yeah. And he's also seems to have accepted that he's warging Ghost when he has these dreams, that they're not just dreams of him being a wolf. He was told by the Rangers when they were in the Frostfangs that he had a warg dream, and when he saw the wildling camp through Ghost's eyes, and he seems to have accepted it. And maybe he's met Varamir Sixskins, and he's lived with the wildlings. So I would think that the concept of warging after having experienced that life is a little bit more easily processed
actually
than previously.
On the subject of the second life, hasn't he met Oral's eagle since Oral died? Didn't I thought the eagle attacked Jon after Oral died.
Yeah, he did. He tried to take his eye out.
So maybe that's where he got this idea from, that the eagle was really mad at him for killing Oral.
Yes.
And so maybe this is where the idea that the spirit of the person infected the animal after the person died.
Absolutely. It might have even been brought up. I don't recall if it was
specifically stated. It was specifically stated in the Varamir Sixskins chapter, because he talked about how he hated Jon Snow because he warged into Oral's eagle, and that remnant was still there. But Jon maybe sensed that too. And then Jon mentions, and it was only a fleeting mention, but he mentions that he is sure that he saw Summer when he was that Summer rescued him at Queen's Crown. And the one thing about that, I know he believes that Bran's dead, so the last thing you would be looking for is Bran. But surely he must find that strange. That wolf, who I would have assumed would get, if I was Bran's murderer, I would murder his wolf too, because I wouldn't want the possibility of that wolf seeking revenge on me. Has trotted 300 leagues just to save you. I'd be like, that's weird. That's really strange.
Crazy coincidence.
He had a lot going on that day, I know, but...
Right, yes, he was fleeing for his life with an arrow in his leg. Yeah.
But still, it just... The fact of it is so startling that you'd be like, why did that happen? And why has that wolf now gone north of the wall?
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes. Yeah, and I've been wondering, after reading this chapter a few times, if Ghost can sense these 100 smaller cousins and this enormous goat that Shaggy is fighting with, can he also sense the fact that Rickon might be standing 10 feet away from Shaggy, or, petting his head at a calmer time, or something like that?
I wonder if that's where the warging works against it, because I wonder if he senses, maybe Jon does sense that, but he thinks it's that connection between the dead Bran and his wolf, rather than a physical, they're together.
Right.
They are together because they are now one kind of thing.
Yes, I could see that. Yeah, makes sense.
So we do find out the origins of why, because Jon sent Sam and Gilly away, and Aemon, slightly, it wasn't really explained. We understood it because we've read all this and come back to it many times, but it felt kind of out of the blue when it happened. Like,
yeah, where was his evidence?
Yeah, there didn't seem to be much, like Sam had no idea it wasn't Gilly's baby.
Right. Yes, you're going to Old Town to become a maester. Gilly's going with you to be safe there.
Right. So
at Horn Hill.
But what's interesting is that he's getting it from overhearing soldiers telling nursery rhymes, it seems.
Yeah, so the description was a bit vague, but the way I got it, the way I understood it, is that Maester Aemon was attending to a queen's man who had been injured, and while he was kind of in a fevered state, he muttered 2 kings to wake the dragon, father first, then the son, so they both die kings. And Jon tried to chalk it up to it just being just a guy, a delirious man saying, ridiculous things. But Aemon said, no, there's power in king's blood.
Right.
And it's not, he wouldn't be the first. Stannis wouldn't be the first man to use king's blood in such a manner.
But for me, I mean, Jon tries this argument in his defense. The most compelling argument is the fact that there is no hereditary rights north of the wall. So killing Mance and then killing Mance's baby isn't killing 2 kings. It's killing a king and then a baby.
And a baby, right.
Who is not the king and would not in any way, shape or form be the king. So, I don't know. I would like to think that would have worked against Stannis and Melisandre, who seem like reasonable people. I'm kidding.
Of course it should have worked. But it does explain possibly why Aemon knew that the baby was not Gilly's baby and Sam didn't. Because he was present when when they heard the man say this, and then he and Jon had a discussion about it. So,
and even if Jon didn't literally say it, the combination of Gilly's tears and the fact that Aemon was shipped out and this baby was shipped out, you'd be like, something funny about this. Yeah.
Yes, Aemon's a smart man, but it does seem that Jon is willing to sacrifice Gilly's baby because he describes Gilly's baby with Dalla's baby's characteristics that how would this work? So he describes Gilly's baby as being robust and hungry and pushing the prince out of the way, pushing Dalla's baby out of the way. But really, it was the other way around. It was Dalla's baby that was the bigger one, that was the greedier one. So he's not,
I guess when you reveal your lie, you say, and that was a lie too, I mean.
Right. I guess so.
But it is a worry, though. It is a worry because if Stannis is willing to burn this baby, when you've explained categorically this baby won't be a king, he'll just be a baby,
right.
Then just because you tell him, and that's not the baby you think it is, that may not stop him. I mean, that doesn't feel like a compelling argument, you know.
Yes, exactly. And that was my exact thought, is he knows that Stannis is slow on the uptake about the way of life north of the wall. So he's putting Gilly's baby very much at risk here. So
yeah.
But he set the stage. You know, he set the stage for Gilly and Mance and Dalla's baby's escape by needlessly naming Gilly as the leak of the secret info. Whether it was true or not, we don't know whether Gilly is the one that told him that he was thinking of giving castles to his lords and Rattleshirt and the Magnar of Then. But he named her nonetheless, and then adds insult to injury with the incest detail with Craster, knowing that the effect that particular detail would have on Stannis would, he'd be happy to see the backside of her on her way out of Castle Black.
But I think you're thinking that was a mistake, but he's doing it on purpose.
No, intentionally.
Oh, okay, I see. Yes. It's absolutely intentional so that he's got a reason to send her away. You're absolutely right. It could be complete nonsense that it was Gilly, but on some levels it makes sense that it might have been Gilly because she's one of the very few people on Team Night's Watch who might have been privy to the discussions that she was snitching on, because anyone wearing black, Stannis would have kept quiet around,
Right. Yeah.
But the wet nurse of the future king north of the wall, you might talk in front of her, not realizing that she would blab. So it could be true. But anyway, the point is, whether or not it's true, you're creating the situation in which you can ship her out of here without suspicion.
Right.
Life is returning to some kind of normalcy at Castle Black. Jon's moved into Donal Noy, the blacksmith's rooms. He has a Baratheon stag because, of course, he was Baratheon. He made, as one of our outtakes said, he made one of Robert's first hammer, last hammer.
His warhammer, right. Yeah, he was the former smith for the Baratheons at Storm's End, and he lost his arm in Robert's Rebellion, and then he left their service, and that's how he ended up here at the Wall. But we also see that new recruits are still coming in, so there's other wandering crows besides Yoren and Darren, who never actually made it to become a wandering crow because he bailed before he actually started doing his job. But they're out there possibly bringing in recruits. So that's a good sign for the Night's Watch. Things kind of bit of normalcy.
And you mentioned that Iron Emmett replaces Thorne as Master at Arms and the recruit trainer. But what's happened to Thorne? I've forgotten that.
He's back. He just doesn't want to do the job anymore, as I recall. Remember, he was sent to Castle Black. He was sent to King's Landing with the moving hand of the White.
Yes.
And then he was brought back with Jaina Slint. But I think he's either he doesn't want to do it anymore or nobody wants him to do it anymore. Probably a little of both.
Yeah. What's interesting is in the TV show, I don't have this in my TV show, so I'll mention it here. Jon elevates him to First Ranger in an attempt to sort of build a bridge.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily work, but...
Well, Iron Emmett, last we saw him, he was being pummeled by Jon despite yielding when they were sparring. Remember, they were sparring, and Jon recalled how he felt jealousy of his brother Robb because Robb would be Lord of Winterfell someday, and Jon never could. And he kind of saw like white rage and started pummeling Emmett, and they had to pull him off of Emmett, who was like, "Hey, I yielded. Relax." So that was the last we saw of Iron Emmett.
So where do things stand between Jon and Stannis? So as I recall, and I think we put in the pre-summary summary, Jon had already refused the offer of being Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, and that actually predated his becoming Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
Right.
Marginally, like the same chapter.
Yes. Yeah. Same day, pretty much. Yeah.
And so the bone of contention now, Stannis has accepted this, I think. I mean, I think he would like it still, and is probably still thinking about it because Jon's still thinking about it, because Jon points out that Lyanna Mormont's response to Stannis is entirely understandable and would probably be different if the letter had been written from Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, rather than Stannis Baratheon, pretender to the throne. Which is not how he signs himself.
I hope not.
But the bone of contention now between the two of them is now over the castles, and it seems they want a lot of the same things. They want the castles rebuilt, refortified, occupied, so that the wall can be protected along its length. That all makes sense. But why Jon is refusing the paperwork he's supposed to sign that per Stannis' request is because Stannis wants to actually give these castles to people.
Yeah.
And what's a little bit what's a little bit confusing about it is it doesn't seem like the actual paperwork spells that out, because it's Jon saying, I'm hearing that you plan to give it to people. So like, well, what did the paperwork say then? You know?
That's a good point. What does the paperwork, I guess, says we're giving them to the king to protect the wall.
Yeah.
It must be something along those lines.
Right. Which on the face, I'd be like, sure. I mean, they're still the Night Watch. The Night's Watch still run them, right? I mean, yeah. So
right.
So yeah, it is a tricky one, but it's also there's going to be some pedantry around this. Let me tell you. Let me forewarn you. But I can certainly see why Jon would say no to this, because you can't you can have volunteers fighting for the Night's Watch in a time of need, but the Night's Watch need to be in charge of these things, because they need the Night's Watch as poor and as fallen on hard times as they are, they know how to survive and operate at the wall.
Yes. And they're the experts at wall life.
Exactly. And these southern lords, they do not. And they can stay and fight, but they can't be in charge. It would be disastrous.
Right. And first of all, Jon is he's young, he's inexperienced, and probably many are unsure of him as Lord Commander. It's not like he won by a landslide. So agreeing to these kind of changes, which would change the Night's Watch forever, they would no longer be independent, no longer, we don't take parts in the wars of men. That would be very unpopular if he agreed to that, first of all.
One question I had, actually, and this is a slightly strange question, is, has Stannis seen any of the magic from north of the wall, like the Whites or the White Walkers? Because
no,
Stannis believes
he's heard
in
the
it
stories.
Because of exactly. Stannis believes in it because of Melisandre, I think, but nobody in his army has, and so that's the other thing. The skeptical amongst that army, if you put them in charge of a thing, they're going to fight tooth and nail against those wildlings, which again is going to be the wrong thing to do. You're fighting the wrong enemy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Not that the Night's Watch are necessarily more credulous, but enough of the Night's Watch have now experienced it for them to be more credulous,
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's not just his own lords and knights that he wants to give these castles to. He's talking about wildling leaders being given castles. Rattleshirt and the Magnar of Then. I mean, that could cause a mutiny at Castle Black, or with the Night's Watch in general.
But that's a better idea. That's a better idea than a southern lord who doesn't know.
Well, true.
Those guys,
as far as fighting the others.
Exactly. Yeah. Those guys will never look south for enemies. They'll only ever look north,
Right. Yeah. And his stance, Stannis's, that is, his stance that his men can't possibly take orders from Night's Watch peasants and poachers, I think it's a bit flawed because, as Jon points out, Davos was a smuggler before he became Stannis' hand of the king, and Stannis says, well, I removed Davos's fingers for his past crimes. Well, taking the Night's Watch vow also pays for previous crimes. So, they aren't poachers, and, well, they might have been peasants, but so was Davos before he became a smuggler.
Yes.
So
absolutely rock solid. You're quite right. And
I do know. I know what you're going to say in pedantry, and I was going to say the same thing. So we'll save that discussion.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if we are saying the same thing. So this is just about our first introduction to Lyanna Mormont. She may have been mentioned a couple of times in the past, but Lyanna Mormont writes the letter to Stannis saying, in no uncertain terms, that the only king she has is the king in the north, whose name is Stark.
Right.
She's speaking for Bear Island. She's only 10 years old, according to Jon. Sounds about right. Why is she writing this letter? Who died to put her in charge? Well, literally.
Well, we know that her mom, Mage Mormont, rode south with Robb.
Right.
And so did her oldest sister, Daisy.
Yes.
Now, we know Daisy was killed at the Red Wedding. We unfortunately watched that happen. It was quite sad. Now, Mage, her mom, was sent with Galbart Glover on a secret mission to find Greywater Watch to provide Howland Reed with info about Robb's attack on the Ironborn at Moat Cailin. We have not heard from Mage or Galbart Glover since. So she hasn't returned back to Bear Island, or she would be, probably writing this letter herself. So she's possibly still on this mission. But Lyanna has two older sisters aside from Daisy. So we don't know why the youngest would be sending this response. It is odd.
Yeah. On some levels, it's because she's the coolest. She is a cool character. So, but yes, it is a strange thing.
I wonder if her uncle Jorah is going to show up, having been exiled by Dany. Maybe he's going to show up on Bear Island to reclaim his lordship.
There's only 2 continents. I got to choose one.
Right.
So, well, that's not even true, actually. I think there is a southern continent somewhere in the full map of the world.
Yeah, Soitheros. Yeah. Soitheros. I can never say that name right. Soitheros, I think it's pronounced.
So, Stannis celebrates the fact that at least he's got the Karstarks, but Jon, I don't think he actually says this, but he thinks to himself, yeah, well, you would get the Karstarks. They have no other friends,
Right.
They've got to do that. They've completely sundered from the Starks, because we remember that Rickard Karstark murdered the Lannister children. Oh, by the way, there's a way to sunder yourself from the Lannisters too, and was unrepentant about it, and Robb Stark was forced to behead Rickard. And so the Karstarks all upped and left. So, yes, they needed someone to pledge fealty to. A new king in the north seems like a handy diversion for the Karstarks.
You summed that up perfectly. They did ally with the Boltons in the Red Wedding plot. There were some Karstarks present at the Twins. And the Boltons are Lannister allies these days.
Right, which is probably the problem.
I would think the killing of Willem Lannister and Tion Frey, and basically the lion hunt where they were just out to kill Lannisters in the Riverlands, possibly a bit too much to forgive. Now, where the family stands at the moment is Arnulf Karstark was the uncle to Lord Rickard. And so when Lord Rickard went south with his sons Harrion, Torrin, and Eddard, Arnulf was left in charge, who is the uncle to Lord Rickard. And then remember that Jaime killed Torrin and Eddard in the Battle of the Whispering Wood, and Harrion, the oldest, the heir, was captive at Maidenpool. It feels a bit dangerous to support Stannis with the Lord of Carhold being held by the Lannisters, because Harrion is technically now Lord Harrion Karstark. So
that's a very good point. Yes. Maybe
he's playing both sides.
Right.
Maybe he's keeping it secret that he's supporting Stannis. Yeah. And one other thing about Jon, on multiple occasions, refers to the Northerners as his father's bannermen, not Robb's. And I think it's likely just habit. I don't think it's any intentional slight on Robb, because technically they were Robb's bannermen after Ned died.
When Jon went to the wall, Ned was in charge. It's hard to shake that impression. Right. It's like, you know, the monarch of the United Kingdom is King Charles. It makes no sense to me.
Right. His mom's still in charge.
Exactly. Her death, neither here nor there. You mentioned, I think, that Stannis' request here is just unfair and incommensurate with what he's giving back, to take these Night's Watch castles to give to his lords, etc. But also he wants money. It's like he's come to the rescue and now he wants to be paid for it. And it's like there's several things that's weird about that. One is why, and secondly, why would you think they had any money? These guys.
And it was such an odd segue to ask for the money too. He said something along the lines of, "You use your words like each one costs you a gold dragon." Speaking of that, how many gold dragons do you have?
I've got these sacks of turnips.
Right. So he needs to pay Salladhor Saan for his service, which is why he's on a gold dragon hunt.
Yeah.
But he's barking up the wrong tree here.
For sure. But Jon gives him the sensible suggestion that he needs to ally with the Manderleys, because the Manderleys are the wealthiest family in the north. If you could get them on side, then that would give him something. But the thing is, if I was the Manderleys, if you said, hey, you want to hitch yourself to my wagon. I am penniless king of a strip of land 100 feet wide at the north end of the continent with no allies. Will you join me? Well, yeah, you've convinced me. All right, can you lend me just a bunch of money now? It's like,
this argument's getting weaker and weaker.
Exactly.
But Wyman's response, he's decidedly non-committal, but with good reason, because, again, this is back in time, but he bends the knee to King Tommen because the Lannisters have his son and heir, Willis.
Right.
So he agrees to side with the Lannisters to get Willis back. And remember, Jaime went to Harrenhal, found Willis, sent him home. But, this is probably before all of that transpires, because we're back at the beginning of A Feast for Crows. So remember, what happened in A Feast for Crows is that Davos was sent to White Harbor to negotiate with Wyman. Wyman sent a raven to King's Landing, negotiating for Willis and executing Davos.
Right.
And there's Freys at White Harbor who have said they have seen sufficient evidence that Davos is indeed dead. So you could see why. We don't know exactly what Wyman has done to this point, but we could see why he's being very non-committal to Stannis, because his son is being held by the other team.
Yeah. Yeah, you've always got to be careful of any rumor in this book, like that Balon Greyjoy slipped on a piece of soap on a bridge between two.
Banana peel.
Exactly. Banana peel. That's even better. He's in Pike. Where the hell did he get a banana from?
It was Euron. He's the only one that's been...
He's been south. He came back with burning dragonglass candles and a bunch of bananas, I tell you.
Yeah.
So Stannis is insistent on killing Mance, despite admitting the fact that he's useful to the cause. And there's a sort of interesting different direction for the TV show here, which I'll mention when we get to that, which is in some ways, I think, better, because some of this is a little bit implausible. I mean, on the one hand, he wants to kill Mance to fulfill this prophecy, But again, if you just listen to what Jon said, you're like, why kill either of them?
Right.
If you need to kill a father and son, then this ain't going to do it. And Ned and Robb, maybe. Or rather, Robb and his baby. Not that Robb's got a baby or anything.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Don't start that rumor. But yeah, I mean, Stannis admits that Mance is useful to him. Jon says the only one that can bind the wildlings to you is Mance.
Yep.
And Stannis doesn't necessarily disagree, but he makes this comment about rules should be made of iron, not pudding, and that Mance broke his oath, and but I was a little bit disappointed and kind of surprised by that statement, because I thought Stannis had relaxed with this iron stance on lawbreaking a little bit. He pardoned the lords who backed Renly because he needed their support,
Yeah.
So it just seems so obviously short-sighted, and that Mance can help his cause if he's so inclined to do so, and if he's, lives, if he is allowed to live.
And then Jon reminds Stannis, when Stannis is sort of pushing on Jon being the Lord of Winterfell, that the true heir to Winterfell is Sansa. That she should be. But Stannis bridles at this, because he's like, well, but you remember who she's married to? That's Lady Lannister. She's,
right.
The imp would bestride the halls of Winterfell. And of course, that is. I can see why he's saying that, because it feels like as a Stark, you would be like, oh my God, no, anything but that. But he happens to have hit on the one Stark who's kind of good friends with Tyrion Lannister, or at least friendly with Tyrion Lannister.
They were, yeah, right. I hadn't thought about that angle.
Yeah.
We don't know. We know this is back at the beginning, right around the time when Tyrion killed Tywin. So we do know, because Davos told Stannis of Joffrey's death at the end of A Storm of Swords. So we do know that Stannis and Melisandre know that Joffrey's dead. It's unclear if they have the details that Tyrion and Sansa are believed to have been involved in the the murder.
Yeah.
So that's a bit unclear.
And your favorite subject, the final sentence of chapters. This one is the traditional "you know nothing, Jon Snow," and you're curious what it's about. To me, there was a very face value explanation of it, because he said she's talking about her vision. Her vision of Jon involves ice, blood, daggers in the dark, and so cold, And he says it's always cold at the wall, and she says, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." I think she's saying you have no conception of how cold it is until the great other gets here.
Yes,
that's what I'm hearing.
Right. So I came up with 3 possible explanations for why she says this. My first one was, you've not seen cold yet. Wait till the others arrive.
Right.
Then you're going to see cold.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yes. That was option 1. The second one is she's showing Jon that she knows things that she couldn't possibly know, to prove that her flames are legit. And she can...
You mean the words she used were to prove to Jon something that she's special?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Ygritte died well before they arrived here, so she should never know that Ygritte would... Her term of endearment was, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." So she's kind of proving...
Okay, reasonable.
I can see, I know what I'm talking about. The flames tell me the future, so listen and trust me.
So maybe both of those things, because if it was just the first thing, she'd have said something like, "You ain't seen nothing yet, Jon Snow."
Right.
But to double down on number 2, she said, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." And the third?
Yeah, well, those two can go together, right? Because she's saying, wait till the others arrive. And trust me, I've seen the future, because you know nothing, Jon Snow.
I've certainly seen your past as well.
But the third thing is the whole conversation is, I see enemies all around you, not obvious. It's not the obvious foes, but the fake friends that are your biggest concern. Keep ghosts close. I see ice, blood, daggers in the dark, and it's so cold. And Jon says, it's always cold at the wall. And she says, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." Possibly she's telling him, you're going to die, and you're going to feel the cold of death. Ooh. And that is the cold that you know nothing about.
Each.
I mean, just from the description, ice, blood, daggers in the dark, keep ghosts around you, you've got enemies all around, or keep ghosts near you, you've got enemies all around. Maybe she's trying to forewarn him.
I will say, though, ice, blood, daggers in the dark, so cold, that's a Tuesday at the wall.
Right. Well, there is that. That's the last sentence, like the last 2 or 3 sentences altogether there. But she says, I see enemies all around you. Would you like me to give you their names? And he says, I know their names. And that's when she says, it's not the obvious foes. It's the fake friends that smile at your face and then sharpen their knives when you turn your back. At that new information, I would say, oh, yes, well then please tell me who you're referring to.
Do tell me the names, yes. And then she'll say something like, the seed is strong. And you'll be like, no! Their names! Their names!
The Sphinx is the riddle, not the riddler.
Killing me. He's stabbed in the back while puzzling over her riddle.
But he's doing some wildly unpopular things here. You know, we know he's going to let the wildlings settle in the gift. That was part of his agreement with Stannis. He's given Stannis the Night Fort. Stannis wants all the castles. So surely he's going to rub some of his brothers the wrong way. So it would be helpful to know which brothers are sharpening their knives when I turn my back.
Yeah. But I mean, on many levels, he is right. He does know directly who his main enemies are. But yes, if you were to discover that like 5 or 6 of your friends were also part of that group, that would be a difference maker for you. So yeah. I'm with you. Let's not die in ignorance here. All right, time for some spoilers. Remember, you can join us at the upper tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels to get the spoiler section. All right, very good. Excellent spoilers, sir. How about some background?
All right, well, so as Jon makes his way from his chambers to visit Stannis and Melisandre, a big knight stops him, first calling him boy, then Snow, then finally Lord Commander. The man is Sir Godry Faring, and it seems that he killed a fleeing giant during the recent battle by riding him down and stabbing the giant through the back with a lance and then jumping off his horse and removing the giant's head. And they call him Giant Slayer, I think, Godry the Giant Slayer or something like that now. Well, here's what I can tell you about House Faring. I don't know the house's seat, but I do know that it's a Crown Lands house. And their sigil is 2 knights squaring off in purple and white interchanged. So the white knights on one side with a purple background and the purple knights on the other side with a white background.
Got it.
We have heard of some of their family. Lady Inara Faring was the 7th wife of Walder Frey. And it's also rumored that she slept with her step-great-grandson, Black Walder, who's got a bit of a reputation for sleeping with family members. Her relationship to Godry is unknown, but Godry's cousin, Sir Brian Faring, is a squire to King Stannis. And Brian's father, Sir Gilbert Faring, was left to command the garrison at Storm's End after Stannis and his hosts left town.
It's interesting how lowly of a wedding that is for Walder Frey, but I guess 7th wife, you're like, I can just choose who I want at this point. You know?
Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Very nice. Comparison with the television show. So the main concept of this chapter is dropped. Stannis didn't want the castles along the wall. In the show, he wanted to let the wildlings fight for him in the north, to win the north back for Stannis. He wanted to recruit them. And that's what Jon... that's the source of contention, but he's not asking Jon to do it. He's asking Jon to convince Mance to do it. He wants Mance to convince the wildlings to do this. Otherwise, he'll kill Mance, is it? So that's where the story goes next. Jon tries to convince Mance, and Mance resists, yada yada.
Right.
The one part that is kept is the sassy letter from Lyanna Mormont. That is kept and makes Stannis equally mad. Jumping to Pendry Corner, which is now related to this, I think the plan in the book is kind of dumb because I don't understand who in Stannis' entourage would be interested.
Right.
Thank you for your leal service. Here is a decrepit castle at the wall.
At the frozen end of the world.
1,000 leagues from your home, but you can have it. It's got plenty of land because who would want to live here, you know?
And there's, first of all, the castles at the wall don't have walls aside from the wall intentionally.
Don't worry about that. Nobody else wants it.
And now you've got wildlings as neighbors because they're settling in the gift. So, I agree that the empty castles are being wasted, but I don't think the Southern Lords are missing much if they are not given one of those castles.
Right. I mean, can I have it for the next few weeks and then go home afterwards? That'd be fine. I'm good with that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really get it. And in fact, using the wildlings as Stannis' army makes a little bit more sense. I think that the TV show made an interesting and possibly a good decision there.
Yeah.
And also, well, I mean, Mance's baby was dropped, so that whole plot line was dropped. And so the Mance going to the fire is more to do with him not bending his will to Stannis rather than him having king's blood. So it's
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I thought the same thing. That's why I didn't say anything back in the general discussion and waited for this.
Yeah. News and notes.
Well, one thing we just wanted to mention is that we've got spots for your reviews.
It's been a while.
So it has. So leave us a positive 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser or wherever you can leave a review. And remember, if you are not in the US, it's really hard these days for me to track down your reviews. So if you have left us a review in on Apple Podcasts in another country, just send me an email, send with a screen cap, or just tell me which country you're from, and I will go find it, and we'll be glad to read it. But yeah, we really appreciate if you'd leave us a positive 5-star review. We promise we'll read it.
Yep. Thanks for doing that. And next week you're having a week off, so it'll be me and Jenny, which is always exciting. We'll see how that goes.
Yes. Yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, it will be, for sure. All right, let's conclude this one. So we've gone back in time, and we've now seen the origins of the Gilly baby Aemon story, and it's hanging together a little bit better. It seems less out of the blue now.
Yes, and Jon carefully orchestrated the Gilly baby removal by just sullying her name, basically.
Right. Yeah. And Jon is he's definitely considering these wolf dreams to be more than just dreams. He's not just dreaming them and going, oh, that was a funny dream. He believes he's seeing real things through Ghost's eyes, which is what warging is, basically.
Yeah. And another thing we've learned regarding Ghost is that he has a psychic connection with his siblings, and Jon is aware of it as well. So
yeah,
it makes me wonder whether there's any way that Jon will learn that his brothers are alive through that psychic connection. But you made a good point about how maybe he would interpret it as their spirit inside those wolves.
Right, yeah. Stannis is, he's had a good moment here. Winning the battle with the wildlings has given him some trappings of power. He looks like a king. He did what the king should do and saved the day. But things have stalled a little bit since then, and his inability to get more allies than the Karstarks, and not even all the Karstarks, it would seem, like a fraction of the Karstarks, makes it look like his pursuit of the Iron Throne is not going in the right direction.
And he's asking a great deal of Jon, which, I mean, as we discussed, it could put Jon in harm if his brothers feel that he's caving too much. He's new as a Lord Commander. He's young. He's inexperienced. Like Stannis said, what might the 999th Lord Commander say? Well, his brothers might think that same thought in the other direction.
Sure. True enough. Melisandre's warning to Jon is pretty ominous. I mean, either she's a mind reader who knows Jon's secrets, or she's telling him that he's going to die, or that she's telling him that the worst that could possibly happen is going to happen. It's all pretty bad news, really. Which one is it, Melisandre? Which is the bad news? All of the above, Jon.
Yeah, it certainly was rather dire, that warning. There wasn't like, there wasn't a lot of positivity involved.
No, indeed.
But I hope he does what she says and keeps Ghost near him. That seems like the best advice that she had.
Yes. Next up is Bran Stark, who it's hard to imagine we ever had Bran as a point of view. It's been so long.
It has been so long, and
I think I started the notes for it, and I think it's been 75 chapters since we've had a Bran chapter.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time. You're going to have a good recap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You could leave us a positive review, as Mackelly was asking. That would be great. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhal. There you could join us at any of the sustainer levels. There's a tier to match your budget and interests. Or you can make a donation directly to our cause at ghostofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode show notes. Please just keep in mind we cannot respond through that method. If you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghost of Harrenhal news and developments, well, I suggest you check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.